John from theproductivegarden.com here, and what I'm going to show you today is how you can make a worm farm for under $45. So what we'll start with is the things that you'll need, and what you'll need is 4 tubs. One tub will be the bottom tub, which will hold the liquid that comes out of the worm farm, and the top 3 tubs will hold the worm castings, the worms and the food that you're putting in there to feed the worms. You will also need a valve of some sort so that we can put this into the bottom container so that the liquid can come out and you can use that for fertilizer on your garden. Okay, and we need those containers to have a lid as well. Now, to get 4 containers that will fit inside each other, you'll probably end up with 4 lids as well, so you'll have 3 lids that you'll pretty much have no use for, but whether you put them in to be recycled or something, that's up to you. Okay, so that's the materials that you'll need. As far as tools goes, you'll need a drill, you'll need a hole saw to make the hole for the valve, and you'll also need a drill bit to make holes in the bottom of the top 3 containers so that liquid, worms and the castings and stuff and the worms can move backwards and forwards from one level to the other. So they're the things you'll need to do it. So let's get started making this. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to drill a hole in the bottom container so that we can install the valve. What you'll need to do is, in your hole saw, they come with a number of different sizes in them, and you'll have to choose the one that will fit the valve that you've chosen for your worm farm. Okay, so the smallest one will fit this valve, so that's the one I'll use. Okay, now when you drill, be aware that the bottom you see here won't always be the bottom. There can be a bit of a lip in the bottom of the container, so you want to make sure that you drill high enough so that you don't make a hole that below the bottom of the container. So just make sure you get high enough. If you leave a little bit of liquid in the bottom of the container, if it doesn't all come out when you open the valve, doesn't really matter, you'll get plenty in there anyway. So we'll drill this hole. Okay, so there's the hole, and our valve can fit in now. Okay, so what I had to do to get a nut for this valve, I had to buy another little fitting. It's just a little fitting for irrigation hose, so that I've got a nut that will fit onto the back end of this valve when I put it through. Okay, so that'll stop it falling out. So what we do is we push this through, and then we can put the nut on the other side. Okay, and what you need to do as well is you need to get some Celastic, and you need to put it around the outside so that you don't have liquid dribbling through. Otherwise, when you go to open the valve, when you go to open it, you'll open the valve up and there'll be nothing left in there because it'll all seep through here. So we will get some Celastic and we'll seal around the outside of that so no liquid comes through. Okay, so that's the bottom tub. Okay, that's all that needs to be done now. And you can see, if we show you here, if you can see it, okay, you can see there it's down near the bottom, so liquid will fill up to a certain point and then it'll you'll be able to get it out. Okay, so that's the bottom tub. With all the other tubs, what we need to do is drill holes in the bottom of the tub so that the worms have got somewhere to pass through and the liquid can drip through as well. If you have the bottom of the tub sealed, they'll fill up with liquid and they'll drown the worms. So you want them to be able to drain through and the worms to be able to move from the old castings at the bottom up through to the new food at the top. So I'm working on a glass table here, so obviously I'm going to protect it by putting the wood underneath. And we just drill about a dozen holes in each one. Okay, so you can see here we've got a whole lot of holes in the bottom here. Now I've just got it up in this raised section here. It wouldn't matter if it was down in this section here as well, as long as you've got those holes that the worms can pass through. Okay, so then the next bit is putting it all together. Okay there, when you're putting this together, what you don't want to happen is for the container that goes in the bottom, inside the bottom container, get it around the right way so they fit. You don't want it to go right down and sit on top of the valve there. What you want to do is lift that up a little bit. So what we need to do is to put something to lift it. Now a brick can be perfect for that job. A small plastic container, something that's not going to break down. So you don't want like a lump of wood in there that's going to break down and go all smelly inside. Okay, so you can put that in there, and then that container is going to sit up off the bottom and allow the water to pool into the bottom. Okay. You do want to drain the liquid out of here every now and then, and the reason for that is if you let the water build up inside this bottom container up to a level, you'll start drowning the worms inside the castings, and you don't want to do that. So you need to drain it off, and you can use it to feed your plants, and you mix it with water at a ratio of about 10 to 1. So for every 10 litres of water, you want 1 litre of liquid. So in a 10 litre watering can, you'd put 1 litre of liquid. Okay, and that'll give you a good dilution to be able to feed your plants. Okay, so next thing what we need to do now is continue putting the other containers in. Okay, so you've got your 1, 2, 3 top containers inside your bottom container, and then you'll get your lid on top. Okay, so that's how it'll look in the end, and you can clip the lid down on this one. If you can get one with snap lids, you'll clip it down so that it's nice and firm. If you wanted to, you could clip the others on as well. Okay, but that's not really necessary. This is how it all goes together. When you go to put your worms in, they'll normally give you an amount of something like peat moss as a base to put the worms into. Now you'll want to soak that peat moss, make sure it's nice and moist, and then put it in there, let it drain off a bit so that the worms don't drown in it. You'll get your worms. You can normally get them from nurseries, hardware stores and that sort of thing. And you'll take the first 2 tubs out and you'll put the worms into the bottom tub. Okay? Then what you'll do is you'll get one of your tubs. You put that on top of the worms and casting, or worms and peat moss. They'll be in there with some castings as well. You put that on there, you'll just let it rest. Now over time it will firm down on top of the worm castings and squash them down a bit. That's fine, that's not a problem at all. The worms will aerate it themselves. And then what you want to start doing is putting the food in there, so your food scraps in there so the worms can move up from the old castings and the peat moss and start eating the food that's in here. And as this fills to a point and starts turning into castings, then you can put the next container on, okay, and it'll slowly sink down into it, but then you can start putting food into there. When you do start with the worm farm, don't put a whole lot of food in there at once. Just start with a little bit at a time. Let the worms start building up, because they'll build up, they'll breed, and they'll populate a lot more inside of the worm farm. And once they're able to, just start putting a little bit more food in. Don't let a whole lot build up and start rotting, otherwise you'll turn your worm farm foul and you'll start making the worms sick. Okay, so that's how you get it started. Start with your bottom container. You've got your container with your worms and your peat moss in there to get them started. Then one container for food. As that fills up, put your container on top. It's a good idea to also get something to cover the top of where you're putting the food. So as you put the food in, you can get an old bit of carpet, a bit of hessian, cardboard, something like that, something that's going to keep the moisture in and keep it nice and moist underneath. Anything that fits on top that's not going to be poisonous, so old carpet, a lot of people use it and it works just fine, but if you're worried about toxic chemicals inside the carpet, probably not the thing. Hessian bags are a good thing to use. You can just cut them or fold them to a shape that's going to fit on top and just lift them up, put the food in and put it back down, and the worms will be happy to go under there and start eating the food that you've put in there. You also need to want to just sprinkle a little bit of water onto the worm farm, not to soak it, but just to keep things nice and damp. So there you are, a worm farm for under $45, easy to make, very quick to make as well. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and we will do a video later on about maintaining your worm farm. There are a few tricks to maintaining it and keeping it going. So we'll see you then. Until then, productive gardening. Bye.